Hello, hello. Welcome. Excited Utterance here. And this is what is a vector logo? And as you can see from my little opening graphic, I have some pixels versus vectors. And there's a reason why I have some little kitty cats fighting there who will win the fight against pixels versus vectors. In my life, I have had both a cat called Pixel and a cat called Vector. Pixel was my very first animal named after a graphic design thing, and then Vector came along. Unfortunately, both those kitty cats are now up in heaven, and they were great. And since then, I've had Seraph, which is another graphic design named Kitty Cat. So you would have, maybe if you follow my live streams, you would have seen Seraph. And I've also had a doggy named Raster, and rasters and pixels are exactly the same thing, by the way. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. Raster was a Japanese Spitz. He passed away late last year. Beautiful doggy. Um, anyway, so moving on, what is a vector logo and why might you need one? You probably have, you might never have even needed to know what these words even mean until someone asked you, do you have a vector version of your logo? And then you went, what are you talking about? Or maybe you're more into graphics and you do know loosely what a vector is and what obviously what pixels are. Like you'd be more familiar with that because it's a more common term. But you might want to know a bit more, in which case today is a great day for you. So let's get into it. I am going to go into my Adobe Illustrator. You don't need to be an Adobe Illustrator. There are other softwares that work with vectors, such as Corel Draw. There's another one called Sign Lab, which obviously people in the sign industry use. And actually, some of the other Adobe softwares do work with vectors. Photoshop does work with vectors, InDesign does work with vectors, but they're not built for vectors. Like Adobe Illustrator is the home of vectors. So that said, there are lots of other softwares, and you can Google and look up the ones that interest you. But vectors aren't owned by Adobe or any other software. That it's a technology that's been around a long time, like early 90s or earlier than that. And the file format that is generally used for saving vectors is called EPS, encapsulated PostScript, and that's been along forever. So back then as well. Now, let's get into it. So I am going to be working today with this logo that I've made for my very good friend and co-host, Dali Talk, Salvador Dali, parody. And I'm going to actually work with vectors in a way that is extremely simple to understand and even to use yourself, because if you work with type, as in fonts, you're already working with vectors, because fonts are made of vectors. And let me show you what I mean. If I zoom up, I'm just going to use my zoom tool here, and I'm going to zoom up onto this top left-hand corner one. You'll see that this is live type. So if I click on it and I use my type tool, I can actually select it and I can even delete. Ooh, there's a different version of it. Tall, talk, right? This font is called MNSTR Line, condensed extra black. Okay, so that was the font that I used, and I just set it up to be blocked like so. Did a little bit of work with the letter spacing or kerning, and got it to sit the way I wanted it to. But it is made of vectors, and I'll show you what I mean. If you zoom right up on live type like this, you will see that no matter what, no matter how far you ever zoom, you will never, ever, ever, it will never blur out. You'll never see little pixels, little squares, ever, right? If it's live type like that you can type onto, okay? Now, there's a difference. If you take a screenshot of type, right, or if it's a picture of type, in any way a picture of it, then that's different, okay? So, and I'll show you because I've gone and done that. So here I am, I've gone and I put some color into it down here, and you can also see there's a picture that I've incorporated with the Dali talk, and that's Dali's cats. He's got some Aussie cats. Just like the original Salvador Dali, he had some ocelots. And so my friend Dali, he has some Aussie cats. And I've made them all warped because, you know, Salvador Dali, he's a surrealist painter. So not just is this picture made of pixels, because that's what we generally imagine is made of pixels, a photograph. If I zoom up, you can see these pixels. There they are. And these ones are on an angle because I've actually moved this photo to be on an angle. But generally, they're straight up and down. So there's the pixels, right? But I'm going to just go down here. Rasterized pixel-based graphics. I have taken a screenshot of the whole thing together, including the type. And if I zoom up on it, look at that. Pixels, right? So that's pixel-based, all of it, the type and the photo. So just because it's type doesn't mean that it's vector-based, right? Because it could be a picture of type, right? So basically, if it's a picture of something, it is made of pixels, not vectors. And doesn't mean that you can zoom it up as much as you like, put it on the side of a bus, and it will be nice and clean, right? So let's just go back a step and have a look at what vectors really are. So I'm going to go up the page. Now, I did a little bit of work to Dali's type in order to make it more surreal looking. And I didn't want to go overboard. I just wanted to create something nice and bold, but also with a bit of warp to it. So I'm in Illustrator, and Illustrator has this cool thing called envelope distort. And let me see, does it, just move that is, yeah. Okay, I'll do it with the green one. Okay, so this one at the moment, if I go Object and Envelope Distort Release, I use the green one there because it looks better on the green one. You can see that there's this object here in the foreground that has these warped elements to it. And oops, if I take that away, there's the original type below it. Okay, so I'll just Command Z and Command Z again. Okay, so I've just done a sort of a warped mesh over the top of that original type in order to create that effect. Now, if I move over, in fact, what I'll do is, before I move over, I'll show you how I locked that in place, right? So this version here doesn't have that effect on it. I've told that type to commit to that effect, basically. So everyone I give this to is not going to have Illustrator. Everyone I give this to is not going to have this software that knows how to apply that effect, right? So what I have to do is tell that effect to go away and just make that type, that shape. So I'm sort of putting that into non-Illustrator terms, right? So I could say that it needs to go and expand, which is exactly what I'm going to show you is going to happen. So if I do it in Illustrator terms, basically, if I pick this one up here, I need to tell it to go to Object and Expand, Object and Fill. Go OK, and you'll see that I now end up with it looking exactly like it did on the right there. Now, if you don't have Adobe Illustrator, that's fine. But for the people who are watching this and they do have Adobe Illustrator, this is how you commit to an effect, right? So you go Object, Expand. Okay. Now, because I have already expanded, it didn't bring up that other dialogue that was there a moment ago. It's very important though, because then you end up with this, right? And this is what I'm really here to show you. These are vectors. Okay, so this is a set of dots. They're called nodes actually. So you've got yourself a set of these dots or nodes that you can pull in and out. They have these little handlebars, right? And they can change the curvature of each line, or they can straighten them out as well. See, like so. Right. You've also got these things here that can make them curvy. I think that might be Adobe Illustrator specific. However, regardless, that's just something that makes it a little bit more comfortable to make the curve. You can still make the curve in other ways, though. You can add to the curves that are there. You can remove some. There's all sorts of things you can do with these. Basically, they're called Bezier curves, and you can do absolutely anything with them, really. Like you can draw the most intricate drawing, or you can draw something really, really simple and have full control over how smooth, how crunchy it is, anything at all. What you can't really do, and I mean, I'm not going to say you can't do it for sure, because I've seen some incredible vector illustrations, but it's not for photographic outcomes. Photographic outcomes are for photos, which are pixel based, and that's more the realm of Photoshop. Okay, so all of the Adobe programs have different things that they are masters of. Photoshop is the master of pixels, it's the master of photos, photo editing. InDesign is the master of layout, right? So it's where all the different elements come together to create a layout. Illustrator is the master of illustration, and I tend to tell my students it's where you make logos. For fashion, it's where you make your flat lays, where you make your like your fashion flat lays. It's where you make patterns. It's really, really good for very detailed technical drawing as well. But it's not photographic. It's not what it's built for. And I might get people in the comments come and say, no, that's not what I use it for. And you can use it for lots and lots of different things. But this is where it shines. It is a vector program. Okay, coming back to here. So I'm just going to take away those edits. If I go into Command Y mode, you'll see that's outline mode. You'll see really, really clearly where all those lines are. Now, also in Command Y mode, if I zoom out, you'll see that anything that is a vector, you can see the outline of, right? Anything that is a pixel, remember there was a big screenshot down there. Anything that was pixel based, you can't see its outline at all. Doesn't exist, right? So it's a really easy way of knowing whether or not something's pixel or vector. If you open it in Illustrator and you go Command Y or Control Y, which is outline mode, and you don't see its outlines like this, it's pixels, right? No question about it. There's no vectors in there whatsoever, right? If you see this, which is, and I'm just pointing to the Dali talk, which is in black, that means it's live type, right? Live type. If it looks like it's supposed to look, then you've got the font. If it looks like a standard, like default, like Times New Roman or Courier or something like that, then you probably don't have the font. There should be an error that comes up to show you that. Okay, I'm going back into normal mode now. All right, so next thing I want to do, and I'm going to end this tutorial pretty quickly now because I'm going to save out this logo here as a vector logo. I will do another stream at some point where or soon actually, where I actually talk about how to make vectors from scratch with using the pen tool, which will change your life. If you do any graphic work whatsoever, you should be able to use this tool here to make your own curves. Yep. All right. But that's one for another day. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. Now, one thing I love about Illustrator is you can, I'm going to grab that one, copy it. You can have a separate artboard that's a completely different shape on the same document. So here I am with this Dali talk here, and he's on a document which is, I can look at my properties. It is over here, it's a square, and I actually typed it in millimeters and it converted it to pixels for me. I'll leave it the way it is because I checked what the millimeters were before. Now I'll make him bigger in the document, like so. I always save logos with a little bit of room on the outside. Reason being, if I don't, someone will always put that logo too close to something. It's annoying. The other thing I do is I grab a box, I make sure it has no fill and no line, and I put it around the edge. And then I use these reference points up here. I grab it by the top left-hand corner and I tell it to live at X0 and Y0. And I tell it to have a width of the same width and height as the artboard. And it looks like the artboard is 560 by 560. Let me try that. No, it's 565. 565 by 565. Go. All right, yes. Now, what I just did was I made sure that the box that I was drawing sits perfectly to the top left of the XY axis of the artboard, and that is exactly the right width and height for the artboard. Okay. And the reason I did that and I made this empty box is so that when I save it, it saves the whole document. Even though it's transparent, it saves the whole thing, right? It makes it so that whoever's getting this file on the other end doesn't get an image that goes right to the edge of that K, right to the edge of that T, and they might just accidentally chuck something really, really close to it, and that can look super ugly. Right? So I'm a careful designer. I don't really trust people to not put things too close. You can do it however you like, but that's just my practice. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all there, and I'm going to go File, and I'm going to Export Selection, and it's asking me where would you like to put it. I'm going to save it. Now it's asking me what do I want to save it as, my format. I'm going to save this one. Where do I want to put it? Now, here's the thing. I can make it a PDF, and that will be fine. I can put a suffix on it. The suffix could be, because it's black, I can call it vector as the suffix. And black. Cool. And it's going into a folder. EU Dali Talk. I'm just going to double check where it's going. Right, because I did make a folder for this, Dali Talk, logos, logo only, black and white. Cool, so I'll choose that. And what else am I going to put? You can change the scale of it, but I don't need to because it's vector already. And PDFs hold their vector value. Okay, so I'm going to be fine with that. And that should be fine. So I'm just going to save that as a PDF file. And now I'm going to open it up. And there we have it. Dali logo, Dali Talk logo, vector black, and it's opened up in Acrobat because it is a PDF. But what you can see, if we get really close to it, and I'm going to zoom right up, check it out. There is absolutely no pixels to be seen. No pixels to be seen, 0 pixels to be seen. Oops. 0 pixels to be seen. So that one's fine. And then the other thing I could do is I could even open it here in Illustrator as a separate file. Dali Talk logo, black and white. There it is. And that means now that there it is. It's editable. It's got all of its vector information. And I could, just to test it out, I could go and put any color, just make a color pink, that'll do. Any color of box, and I'll put it to the back behind it. And yes, it is transparent, it's fine. And again, it is also perfectly fine there. If you want to make it into an EPS, which is an encapsulated PostScript, and make it really accessible to some sign writers really like EPSs, you can also save a copy. And I've got pink in there right now, but it doesn't really matter. As an Illustrator EPS, save as. And the best thing to do with that is to save all the way back to an Illustrator 3 EPS. I'm just going to get rid of that. Oops. Okay. Go back there. Now I'm just going to get rid of that, and I'm going to go save a copy. And I'm going to do this again. I'm going to save it as an Illustrator EPS. Dali Talk logo vector black, and this one's going to be black EPS. Save. And yes, like I said, I'm going to go all the way back to Illustrator 3. And this is really for going to all different kinds of machinery. And Dali did actually ask me to save back an old-fashioned EPS because he's opening it up in some signage software, I think. And I know from experience that those guys like the EPSs saved backwards, so that's fine. And I can just save him a black version because with engraving and things like that, they just like to have the outlines to use. They don't really care what color. Okay, so that's pretty much enough for that to explain the ins and outs of just what the difference is between the pixels and the vectors. And as I said, I'm going to do more on this. I'm going to show you how to actually draw these things and save them out. But you do need to put a little bit of practice time into it because it's like riding a bike. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of doing it in your own time, but it's so worth it. And especially what you're going to find is it's going to help you across all of your different softwares because that pen tool, it's everywhere. All right, so that is the end. And I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for joining me. And please like and subscribe. If you want more of this content, tell me about it in the comments. If you've got any questions, I'll be really happy to answer them for you. And it's been just wonderful having so many people joining me for my graphics content. I usually do much more of the court commentary and stuff like that, but lately there's been heaps more people joining me for my graphics content. So please leave me some comments and likes and things like that, and make sure that you stick around for more of it, because I'm going to be bringing you tons more. Thank you so much.